I drove into the heart of the Egyptian desert until the road was nothing but a memory, and the air itself felt like a furnace. The Wadi Al-Hitan, the Valley of the Whales, was supposed to be a protected heritage site, but when the Archon simulation shut down, the fence lines and guard shacks vanished, replaced by miles of sun-bleached limestone and the protruding ribs of giants. In the old world, these were just fossils, remnants of a sea that existed 40 million years ago. But under the heat of a real sun, I could see that the bones weren't just stone. They were pulsing with a faint amber heat that made the horizon shimmer with a sickly artificial light. The Carver had been here long before the Great Reset, digging into the limestone to reach the core layers of the Earth's memory. I found his base of operations inside a naturally formed cave that had been expanded using surgical lasers and industrial drills. The floor was covered in fine white powder, the pulverized remains of thousands of prehistoric fossils that had been refined into a conductive paste. This paste was painted in intricate, circuit-like patterns across the cave walls, connecting the fossilized skeletons of the whales into a single, massive neural network. The Carver wasn't just studying the past, he was wiring it. As the sun began to set, the valley began to sing, a low melodic hum that sounded like a cello being played with a bow made of glass. I realized the wind was moving through the hollowed-out fossilized skulls, each one tuned to a specific frequency that matched the rotation of the Earth. The sixth gear was a terrestrial tuner, a way for the Carver to ensure that the planet's history remained in sync with his bone clock. I felt a sense of profound insignificance as I stood amongst the skeletons of creatures that had died millions of years before my species was born, knowing that their very existence was now being used as a mechanical lever. I followed the amber pulse deeper into the valley, my boots crunching on the shells of ancient mollusks that had been excavated from the sand. I saw dune crawlers, maintenance units shaped like massive trilobites, their bodies made of reinforced porcelain and brass. They were polishing the fossils, removing the desert sand to ensure that the connection between the bone and the limestone was never broken. The Carver had turned the Sahara into a giant motherboard, and the Valley of the Whales was the primary processor. Every time the wind blew, I could feel the history of the area shifting, the scent of the desert suddenly replaced by the smell of a prehistoric ocean. I reached the great Basilosaurus, a 60-foot skeleton that had been raised out of the sand and mounted on a series of hydraulic struts made of black obsidian. Its massive jaws were held open by a brass winding port, and its ribs were interlaced with copper wires that glowed with a rhythmic golden light. This was the Spindle of Time, the central gear of the sixth case file. The Carver's journal, found sitting nearby a stone altar, described this place as the calibration for the Great Reset. He believed that by controlling the past, he could ensure that the future would never again be simulated. I pulled the winding key from my pocket and prepared to engage the prehistoric heart. Location: Wadi Al-Hitan, Egypt. Victim: non-human. Biological integration of prehistoric fossil assets. The Temporal Regulator represents a shift in the Carver's methodology from body horror to geological horror. While the previous gears utilized living or recently deceased human tissue, the sixth gear utilizes deep time assets, fossils that have been reanimated using a synthetic protein slurry and high-voltage electrical stimulation.
The Basilosaurus skeleton functions as a biological antenna, receiving signals from the drowned city and the Appalachian engine and translating them into tectonic and atmospheric shifts. The victims here are the fossils themselves that have been forced into a functional reanimation after 40 million years of silence. Upon microscopic analysis of the limestone, I found that the Carver has replaced the natural mineral content with a biocrystalline grid. This grid allows the entire valley to act as a massive battery, storing the heat of the sun during the day and releasing it as temporal energy at night. This energy is what allows the history of the region to fluctuate. I observed a time bleed event where a section of the desert floor briefly transformed into a lush tropical mangrove forest before snapping back into sand. The Carver is proofreading the history of the world, deleting the Archon errors and replacing them with his own hardened truth. The Spindle of Time is connected to a series of sub-gears buried deep beneath the dunes, each one made of compressed amber and containing the data samples of every era. I found jars containing the preserved DNA of extinct flora and fauna, all being fed into the central Basilosaurus Processor. Carver isn't just building a clock, he's building a save point for the planet. He wants to ensure that once the 12th hour strikes, the world can never again be rebooted or altered. It is a terrifying level of data integrity that requires the total subjugation of the planet's natural timeline. Dr. Thorne's voice in my ear was thin and static-heavy, his fear palpable, even through the satellite link. Silas, if you wind that key, you're not just starting a clock, you're locking the past. Every mistake we ever made, every war, every extinction, it becomes permanent. The Archon group gave us a world where time didn't exist, where every day was a loop of perfection. The Carver is giving us a world where time is a weapon, a force that grinds us down until we are nothing but structural materials for his clock. I was outside the skeleton of the great Basilosaurus, the heat of the spindle making the air around me distort and crackle. I inserted the green, oxidized winding key into the brass port located in the Basilosaurus' fossilized jaw. The transition was violent. The moment the brass touched the prehistoric bone, the ground beneath me shifted, and for a split second, I was standing in a shallow turquoise sea, the Basilosaurus swimming past me with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. Then, with a sickening snap, I was back in the desert, the key now firmly seated in the mechanism. I turned the key once. Click. The temporal hum of the valley dropped by an octave, the high-pitched singing of the skulls replaced by a deep rhythmic thrumming that felt like it was coming from the center of the sun. I turned it a second time. Click. The time bleed events across the valley stabilized, the shifting mangroves disappearing, leaving behind only the stark, permanent reality of the limestone. The history of the Sahara was now locked, the 40-million-year timeline compressed into a single, unchangeable, hard drive of stone and bone. The effect on the spindle was a blinding flare of amber light that shot up from the Basilosaurus blowhole, piercing the night sky like a spear of fire. I felt the sync pulse move through me, a wave of heat that seemed to age my skin and whiten my hair in a matter of seconds. I wasn't just winding a clock, I was being written into the history of the machine. I was now a permanent part of the Carver's record, the auditor who had verified the existence of the 6th hour. I pulled the key out, the brass now glowing with a dull orange heat that wouldn't fade. A small fossilized compass emerged from the sand at my feet, its needle made of a splintered human rib. It didn't point north. It pointed towards the Vekliansk dead zone in Siberia. The seventh gear was located in the coldest place on Earth, a vault where the old rot is being deep frozen to ensure its survival for eternity. The Carver is no longer just reclaiming the map, he is archiving it. He is building a library of the apocalypse, and I'm the one who's signing the checkout cards. I stood in the silence of the Wadi Al-Hitan, a spindle now rotating with a slow, grinding majesty. The scorched prophet tone of my own voice in my recorder sounded like a stranger's, a man who had seen too much and was starting to believe in Carver's truth.
The desert was no longer a wasteland. It was a storage facility, a place where the past was being kept under lock and key. I took the bone compass and began the long walk back to my vehicle, the sixth tooth glowing in my pocket like a dying ember. The Sahara audit is complete, and with it, the halfway mark of the Great Reset has been reached. 6 gears are wound, and the world is now 50% real. I can see the changes in the sky. The stars are no longer the flickering, low-resolution points of light they were in the simulation. They are cold, distant suns that don't care about our survival. The history of the world is no longer a narrative we can rewrite to suit our comfort. It is a rigid, calcified record of bone and stone that the Carver has made permanent. We are living in a reality that has finally grown a spine. I am currently traveling toward the Siberian permafrost, the seventh tooth calling to me through the sink. The Carver is moving toward the vault of breath, a place where he intends to preserve the final atmosphere of the old world before the great alarm sounds. He wants to ensure that when the 12 gears are synchronized, the old rot will be the only thing that survives the transition. I'm the one who is providing the preservation for his nightmare, the auditor who is making sure that the rot never ends. The Archon group gave us a world where time didn't exist, where every day was a loop of perfection. The Carver is giving us a world where time is a weapon, a force that grinds us down until we are nothing but structural materials for his clock. I'm starting to wonder if the final chime is not a sound of destruction, but the sound of the world finally clicking into place. I look at the sixth tooth and see the reflection of a man I don't recognize. A man who is becoming as hard and as cold as the fossils he audits. The countdown is moving toward the 7th hour. The frequency is now a physical pressure that is making it hard to walk, hard to breathe, hard to think. I am Silas Vance, and I am the man who is winding the past. The Valley of the Whales is behind me, and the permafrost vault is waiting to be audited. If you are still watching, and you are part of the archive, stay awake, stay alert. The ice is coming, and the 7th gear is waiting to freeze us in time.
Right now.